As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the dusty streets of Silver Creek, a young cowboy named Jake stumbled upon something extraordinary. While exploring his late father's old barn, Jake was drawn to a hidden corner where light barely seeped through the cracks in the wood. There, covered in a layer of dust, lay an old Colt revolver. Its brass handle gleamed, saying more about its owner than words ever could. Jake's heart raced as he picked it up, feeling the cool weight of the weapon in his hands. Memories flooded back, vague images of his father, a proud gunslinger with tales of bravery and adventure that seemed larger than life. Stories of how he had defended their town against outlaws and fought for justice echoed in Jake's mind. The revolver was not just a weapon, it was a piece of his father's history, a legacy left behind. Yet, with this discovery came an unsettling feeling. Alongside the pride stood confusion. What kind of man had his father been? Jake remembered whispers among townsfolk, tales of bloodshed and loss tied to that very gun. As night fell, the shadows within the barn grew longer, mirroring the shadows Jake felt creeping into his heart. He couldn't ignore the weight of this discovery. The realization struck him, that Colt belonged to his father, yes, but so did the blood on it. Was he ready to learn the truth about his father's past? Would he dare to follow in those footsteps? With his mind swirling like the dust around him, Jake clutched the revolver tightly, knowing that this moment would change everything. Silver Creek was a small, dusty town that seemed to breathe the spirit of the Wild West. The streets were lined with wooden buildings, their faded signs creaking in the warm breeze. A saloon stood at one end, its swinging doors inviting laughter and whispers of secrets that danced in the air, while the sheriff's office watched over the town with a mix of pride and worry. The atmosphere was thick with tension, as outlaws roamed like shadows, ever ready to challenge the law. As Jake stepped into town, he could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. He noticed the townsfolk casting sideways glances, a mixture of curiosity and caution filling their eyes. It was clear they remembered his father, the legendary gunslinger who once stood tall against those who threatened Silver Creek. Yet now, whispers of uncertainty filled the air, some spoke of old debts and unfinished business that had not yet been settled. Jake watched as two lawmen stood outside the sheriff's office, their faces grim and serious. They exchanged hushed words, and Jake caught snippets about an outlaw gang rumored to be nearby, looking for trouble. The tension in the air prickled his skin, making him acutely aware of how quickly things could escalate in a place like this. With each step he took, Jake felt the weight of his father's legacy bearing down on him. He was not just a boy anymore, he was part of this town's history, and he would have to navigate its dangers carefully. The Colt revolver tucked at his side served as a reminder that he might soon face the very bloodshed his father once encountered. In Silver Creek, every choice mattered, and the echoes of the past loomed large over the present. As Jake wandered through Silver Creek, memories of his father began to pulse in his mind like the distant beat of a drum. He envisioned the rugged figure of Tom McCall, a man whose reputation as a gunslinger was spoken of in hushed tones. Years ago, Tom had been the town's protector, known for his quick draw and unwavering dedication to justice. Stories of his courage were legendary, from standoffs with infamous outlaws to saving innocent townsfolk caught in dangerous crossfire. In one vivid memory, Jake recalled a summer afternoon when he had watched his father face down a notorious gang led by Black Jack Malone. The sun shimmered fiercely that day, illuminating Tom's steely resolve. With calm determination in his eyes, he stood tall outside the saloon, unflinching in the face of danger. As bullets flew and chaos erupted around him, Jake could still hear the rattling of spurs and the echoing gunshots. It was then that he truly grasped the nature of bravery. His father didn't just wield a weapon, he wielded hope for the people of Silver Creek. But alongside those tales came darker recollections too, whispers about how many lives had been lost and how many egos had been bruised in that reckless pursuit of justice. Jake's heart clenched as he thought about what it meant to carry such a legacy. The Colt revolver at his side felt heavy not only with history but also with unanswered questions about violence and sacrifice. As dusk settled over Silver Creek, he understood that knowing who his father was, and what he stood for, would shape not only Jake's own destiny but also how he would confront the challenges ahead in this dangerous world. The tension in Silver Creek shifted dramatically the day a notorious outlaw named Rufus Grimes rode into town. Word spread quickly among the townsfolk, and dread seeped into every corner of the dusty streets. They whispered his name like a cursed spell. Rufus was known not just for his ruthless behavior but for holding a deep grudge against Tom McCall, Jake's father. The stories told of his fiery rage after being humiliated by Tom in a duel that left him scarred, both physically and emotionally. As Jake stepped outside, he could feel the uneasy energy buzzing in the air. He saw Rufus dismount from his horse, swaggering through the main street with a crew of hardened men at his back. The sight sent chills down Jake's spine. This was no ordinary outlaw. Rufus had sworn revenge against Jake's father for past wrongs, and now that Tom was gone, Jake feared the wrath would descend upon him instead. The sheriff called a town meeting to address the threat, urging everyone to remain vigilant. But as Jake listened to the worried murmurs around him, he felt a fire ignite within. This wasn't just about his father anymore, it was personal. He couldn't let Rufus walk into Silver Creek unchallenged while his father's legacy hung in the balance. Determined not to hide behind fear, Jake resolved to confront Rufus and protect what little remained of his father's honor. The Colt revolver at his side felt like both a blessing and a curse, a tool for justice but also an emblem of the violence that had marked his father's life. As night fell over Silver Creek, Jake prepared himself mentally for what lay ahead, knowing that the confrontation between past and present loomed closer than ever. As night fell, Jake found himself sitting on the worn wooden steps of the sheriff's office, the weight of the Colt revolver resting heavily on his lap. Shadows danced across the street, and he felt an overwhelming surge of anger and sorrow racing through him. The tales of his father's legendary status as a gunslinger were both a source of pride and a painful reminder of the bloodshed that came with it. In his mind, Jake replayed all the stories he had heard, how Tom McCall once stood bravely against outlaws to protect Silver Creek but also how those very encounters had left wounds that never fully healed. Each time he thought of Rufus Grimes seeking vengeance, a fire ignited within him. Yet, alongside that fire was a deep sorrow for the lives lost, not just in battles against outlaws but also for the impact it had on families left behind. What kind of legacy was this? The more he learned about his father's past, the more conflicted Jake became. He wanted to honor Tom and be courageous, but at what cost? Still, anger bubbled within him as he recognized that Rufus's vendetta didn't just threaten his father's memory, it put his own life at risk too. This was not merely a fight for honor anymore. As Jake stared at the revolver's polished barrel, he began to understand that carrying this Colt meant facing not only challenges posed by outlaws but also embracing the complicated legacy of violence that marked his family. Would he become like his father, a man known for bravery but also marked by blood? Or could he find a different path to protect those he loved without repeating history? The struggle weighed heavily on his heart as he contemplated what lay ahead. Just as Jake was lost in his thoughts, an unexpected visitor approached him. It was Old Man Harlan, a seasoned ranger known throughout Silver Creek for his wisdom and understanding of the ways of the West. With a weathered face and a voice like gravel, he had seen more than his fair share of battles and bloodshed, but he also carried stories of hope and redemption. "Son," Harlan began, settling down beside Jake, "I've seen that look in a young man's eyes before. It's the weight of legacy, isn't it?" Jake nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension at having someone to talk to. Harlan continued, "Your father fought with honor, but every gun has its price. You must learn what it means to carry that burden." Over the next few days, Harlan became a mentor to Jake, guiding him through the lessons that were often lost in tales of glory. They would sit by the campfire under the stars as Harlan shared stories from his own life, of moments when he had to choose between vengeance and forgiveness, between pride and humility. "A true gunslinger knows when to draw his weapon," he said one evening, "but even more importantly, he knows when to put it away." Harlan taught Jake about responsibility, not just for himself but for the people around him. "You can't let anger drive your actions," he reminded him sternly. "You have to channel that fire into something good. Each lesson resonated deeply within Jake as he prepared for the inevitable confrontation with Rufus Grimes. In those moments spent learning from Harlan, Jake began to understand that honor wasn't just about bravery, it was about making choices that would shape not only his future but also the future of Silver Creek. The Colt revolver might symbolize his father's past battles, but now it also represented Jake's journey toward defining what kind of man he wanted to become. The day of reckoning loomed, and Jake felt the pressure mounting as he walked through Silver Creek. Rufus Grimes had made his intentions clear, and whispers of confrontation filled the air. Yet, with his father's Colt revolver strapped to his side, Jake faced a dilemma that gnawed at him: should he confront Rufus himself or seek the help of the town's lawmen? Jake could hear Old Man Harlan's wise words echoing in his mind: honor was about choices. The townsfolk looked to him, but would they see a brave gunslinger or just a reckless young man pursuing vengeance? He understood that taking on Rufus alone could lead to bloodshed, not just for him but for those he loved in Silver Creek. The memory of his father's legacy tugged at him heavily. He didn't want to repeat history. As he strolled past the sheriff's office, Jake spotted Sheriff Lawson deep in conversation with a group of local lawmen. Suddenly, doubt washed over him. Were these lawmen ready to back him against an outlaw of Rufus's caliber? Would they stand firm if the fight turned ugly? Jake had seen enough gunfights to know that courage often turned to chaos in an instant. Taking a deep breath, he stepped toward the sheriff's office, intent on discussing the situation. But as the sound of laughter erupted from the saloon nearby, a fire ignited within him, the restless urge to take control. The Colt felt comforting yet burdensome at the same time. It was a key to honor but also a gateway to violence. Standing at this crossroad, Jake understood that either choice would define who he was meant to be. He needed to weigh not just the risks but also what kind of man he wanted to become under the weight of his father's legacy. With resolve building inside him, Jake prepared to make a decision that might change everything in Silver Creek. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow over Silver Creek, as Jake prepared for the climactic showdown with Rufus Grimes. The tension in the air was palpable, each breath he took thick with anticipation. With every passing moment, he felt the weight of his father's legacy bearing down on him like a heavy cloak, both a comfort and a burden. This confrontation would not only determine his fate but also reflect the values that Tom McCall had fought for. As Jake adjusted his Colt revolver and checked his gear, old memories danced in his mind. He recalled tales of his father standing tall against overwhelming odds, a symbol of strength and honor. Would he be able to summon that same courage when faced with Rufus? As night crept in, shadows stretched over the town, and Jake set out toward the saloon where Rufus was last seen. It was an uneasy walk filled with thoughts of what lay ahead. Villagers peered from their windows, faces etched with fear and curiosity. They knew this confrontation could spiral into chaos. The image of Harlan's wise words loomed large in his mind: a true gunslinger knows when to draw his weapon. Jake understood that this battle was about more than just vengeance, it was about choosing to stand for something greater than himself. When he finally reached the saloon, a hush descended as he strode inside. All eyes were on him as Rufus lounged at the bar, grinning menacingly. Jake felt a rush of determination surge through him. He was ready to face not just Rufus but also the legacy of violence and honor that came with being a McCall. With his heart pounding in his chest and the Colt gripped firmly in hand, he took a deep breath and prepared to make history, his own history, in Silver Creek. The saloon was silent as Jake stood facing Rufus Grimes, the tension between them crackling like dry kindling ready to ignite. Rufus lounged casually at the bar, his eyes glinting with malice, utterly confident in his impending victory. "You think you can take me on, boy?" he sneered, the air thick with arrogance. Jake's grip tightened around the Colt revolver as he felt every pulse of his heartbeat echoing in his ears. "I'm not here just for myself," Jake replied, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside him. "I'm here to defend my father's legacy." The words hung in the air, laden with the weight of family history and the battles fought long before him. Memories of Tom McCall flashed in his mind, his father's unwavering bravery and the sacrifices made for those he loved. Rufus laughed, a cruel sound that reverberated through the saloon. "Your father was a coward, and you're just a boy playing gunslinger." In that moment, something shifted within Jake. He remembered Harlan's lessons about honor and responsibility. This fight was more than vengeance, it was about standing up for what was right. As he took a step forward, a rush of determination surged through him. "I may not be my father, but I carry his spirit," Jake declared, his voice ringing clear. In that instant, he felt a connection to his father's courage, fueling his resolve. The showdown unfolded like a scene from the old tales. Jake faced down Rufus with every ounce of strength he could muster. With each shot fired, he understood the heavy legacy of bloodshed, yet he carved out a new path, one that acknowledged both bravery and the costs it bore. This confrontation would define not just his fate but also honor his father's memory while allowing him to forge his identity in the unforgiving Wild West. As the dust settled after the intense showdown with Rufus Grimes, Jake stood in the saloon, heart pounding and breathless. The weight of the Colt revolver still hung heavy on his hip, a constant reminder of both victory and loss. He had fought bravely and defended his father's honor, but now he faced another challenge, reconciling his father's legacy with his own identity. The townsfolk slowly emerged from their hiding places, voices rising in a mix of awe and relief. They looked at Jake with newfound respect, but he felt an inner turmoil brewing. Did he want to be remembered as just another gunslinger, or could he forge a different path? The violence that came with being a McCall was not something he wished to repeat. Jake turned away from the crowd, seeking solace outside where the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Memories of Tom McCall flooded back, of bravery shown not just in gunfights but also in moments of compassion and kindness. He realized his father had been more than a gunman, he had also been a protector of Silver Creek's spirit. With newfound clarity, Jake made a decision. He would honor his father's legacy not by clinging to revenge or violence but by embodying the values that truly mattered: justice, responsibility, and community. He would be a cowboy who stood for what was right without letting anger guide him. As he walked back toward the saloon, Jake felt lighter. The Colt revolver no longer felt like just a weapon of bloodshed, it became a symbol of hope, a reminder that he could carve out his own destiny while honoring the past. With each step forward, Jake embraced his journey as his own man, ready to shape the future of Silver Creek with honor and integrity. As the sun set on Silver Creek, Jake stood outside the saloon, reflecting on the journey he had taken. The weight of the Colt revolver at his side felt different now, no longer just a reminder of bloodshed, but a testament to the lessons he had learned about courage and forgiveness. He understood that true strength lay not in drawing a weapon but in choosing how to respond to challenges. The confrontation with Rufus Grimes had tested him in ways he never imagined. In that moment of strife, Jake realized that avenging his father's legacy through violence would not bring him peace or honor, rather, it would only perpetuate a cycle of pain. Instead, he opted for a path marked by integrity and compassion, recognizing that honoring Tom McCall meant living up to the ideals his father fought for, a commitment to justice and responsibility. As townsfolk emerged cautiously from their homes, awe and respect filled their eyes as they looked upon Jake. He could sense their curiosity, wondering if he would follow in his father's footsteps or carve out a new identity for himself. In that moment, Jake made a silent promise: he would be an example of what it meant to be a true cowboy, not one who sought vengeance but one who worked toward healing and unity within Silver Creek. With each step forward, he embraced the opportunity to build bridges instead of walls. The stories of old echoed in his heart as Jake prepared to lead by example, teaching others that bravery often resides in forgiveness and that family legacies are honored through actions driven by love rather than hatred. As darkness fell over Silver Creek, Jake felt ready to write a new chapter, one filled with hope and the promise of a better tomorrow.